Hey guys, how's it going? Around Gaming here. Wanted to make a full beginner's guide for Windwalker Monk going into Season 3 patch 10.2. Now this guide may not include everything, but it should give a good starting point for beginners looking to get into and learn the spec. So Windwalker Monks have recently been listed as B- tier in Mythic Plus, and for rating tier they've been listed at D-. However, there have been some recent changes to Windwalker Monk as of just a few days ago that have massively increased the damage of the spec. So we're suspecting to see them about middle of the pack now in single target, and I would probably put them in around A tier for area of effect. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the guide. So Windwalker Monk focuses around two aspects. They have both chi and energy. So chi is going to be your combat spender. It's like a point system, and you use your abilities to generate these combo points, and then you spend those points on other abilities. And then energy for Windwalker Monk is, it's going to be the same as many other classes like Feral Druid or Rogue. You'll passively regenerate energy, and you can use that resource to basically spend your abilities. And the spec kind of works by balancing these two resources. All right, so first things first, we're going to kind of talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses here. So why would you even want to bring a Windwalker Monk into your comp? Basically, the main reason is probably going to be high AoE burst damage. They have a lot of good area of effect spells that really burst hard. They have great mob control, and they also have great mobility. So one of the downsides of the spec is that it doesn't have any sort of immunity, but they do get access to abilities like, Touch of Karma and Fortifying Brew, which kind of help offset that. I think that those are two pretty strong defensive cooldowns. They also don't bring like a form of battle res. They don't bring any sort of lust or heroism. And this apparently has been fixed. I guess we'll see. But they also tend to lack, historically speaking, they tend to lack in single target damage. But with all that being said, Windwalker Monk is probably the most fun DPS spec I have ever played in WoW. It is one of my favorite specs. It just flows well. I think it was designed very well from the ground up. Unfortunately, they don't get the balancing and the tuning that we wish they would get from patch to patch, from season to season. But it is a really fun class, and I think you will really enjoy this if you do end up picking it up. We also have the stat priority. This also comes from Wowhead. Agility over versatility, which equals critical strike, which is greater than mastery, which is greater than haste. All right, so that kind of segues me into our mastery combo strikes. This is going to make your abilities do 10% more damage when they're not a repeat of the previous ability. So this is very important to your damage. You almost never want to be recasting the same ability twice, as you will lose this 10% damage buff. So you're going to kind of want to be weaving abilities in and out of your rotation as much as you possibly can. This is something new that I'm kind of trying here, is I'm trying to take a specific talent or ability, and I'm trying to find all of the abilities or talents that synergize with that one specific talent. So for example, as you can see on the screen here, you can see I have this little blue magnifying glass next to each talent on the talent tree. Those are going to be talents that synergize with combo strikes. So I think that this is a really good way to learn a class or a specific spec, is find an ability, go into your talent tree, figure out what synergizes with it. So speaking specifically to combo strikes, these are going to be the 4 talents here that kind of synergize with it. So for the most part, Meridian Strikes, Schwinn's Bonds, and Fury of Schwinn are all going to reduce the cooldown of that specific ability. So you can kind of read there, just to do one here, Meridian Strikes reduces the cooldown of Touch of Death. Right, so those 3 are just going to be basically extra CDR through combo strikes. And then we also have hit combo here. So each successive attack that triggers combo strikes in a row grants 1% increased damage, stacking up to 6 times. So you can see it's really important to keep that combo strike mastery up, and you kind of want to be weaving, in and out of different targets and using different abilities. You don't ever want to use the same ability twice in a row. All right, and then hit combo is going to be a buff that you're going to want to track. So each time that your mastery is triggered, you get a stack of hit combo. So the way that's going to work is I'm going to go Tiger Palm. I'm going to use a different ability. So I'm going to use Blackout. Once again, I'm going to use a different ability, Rising Sun. You can see now I have 3 stacks of hit combo. This will cap out at 6 stacks. One thing to note is if you do use the same ability twice in a row, so I just used Tiger Palm, let me use it again. I just lost all those stacks. So you never want to be using 2 abilities twice in a row because it will affect your hit combo and it will affect your mastery as well. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Blackout Kick. So first things first here is Shadow Boxing Treads. Blackout Kick damage is increased by 10% and strikes an additional 2 targets. So that's Shadow Boxing Treads. It just turns Blackout Kick into an AoE ability, basically. We have Mark of the Crane. So each unique target that you hit with Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Rising Sun, I think it's just those 3 abilities, will trigger Mark of the Crane. So just to show you what that looks like with Blackout Kick, I just pressed Blackout Kick and all 3 targets were marked with Way of the Crane. So you really want to be weaving in those Blackout Kicks just to make sure that Mark of the Crane is on every single target during AoE pulls. All right, then we change locations here. Just trying to find a place that's a little bit quieter here. But going on with Blackout Kick, we also have Hardened Souls. Blackout Kick's crit strike chance is increased by 2% and crit damage increased by 4%. So we don't take that in the Mythic Plus build. We have Teachings of the Monastery. So Tiger Palm causes your next Blackout Kick to strike an additional time, stacking up to 3. So just to show you what that looks like, a Tiger Palm, a Tiger Palm, Tiger Palm. And I have 3 stacks of Teaching of the Monastery. And now when I Blackout Kick, it kicked 3 times. And since I also have Shadow Boxing Treads, it hit all 3 targets 3 times. So those 2 abilities really synergize well with each other. Okay, then for Transfer the Power, we have Blackout Kick and Rising Sun Kick. Increase the damage of your next Fist of Fury by 3%, stacking up to 10 times. So for Blackout Kick, you can see each time I Blackout Kick, I'm getting a stack of Transfer the Power. I go up to 10 times, and you want to be Fist of Furying on 10 stacks as often as possible. All right, so up next we have Fist of Fury. You can see that there's a lot of different nodes that really synergize with Fist of Fury because it's one of our core rotational talents. So one of the main ones here I want to talk about is Fury of Schwinn. Your combo strikes grant a stacking 1% chance for your next Fist of Fury to grant 5% haste. So once again, this goes back to our mastery again. That's why it's so important not to use the same ability twice in a row, because it also affects your Fist of Fury. Another important one I want to talk about was Schwinn's Battle Gear. Rising Sun's critical strikes reduce the cooldown of Fist of Fury by 4 seconds. When Fist of Fury ends, the critical strike chance of Rising Sun Kick is increased by 40% for 5 seconds. That's really going to help us out with our single target, and you can see how Rising Sun Kick and Fist of Fury kind of synergize well with each other through this talent. Up next, we have Leg Sweep, which is going to really help us with our mob control. It's one of the reasons that Monk is considered one of the better mob control classes in the game, is due to talents similar to Leg Sweep. It's going to knock down all enemies within 6 yards, stunning them for 3 seconds. We do have one talent here that synergizes with Leg Sweep, which is Tiger Tail Sweep. And this is just simply going to increase the radius of Leg Sweep and reduce its cooldown by 5 seconds per talent. So just to kind of show you what that looks like, Leg Sweep, you just press it here, and you can see it has stunned these 2 target dummies. Then we also have Roll here, just to show you what that looks like. It goes on a 20-second cooldown, and it's a short dash. I normally save this just to dodge any sort of ground effects or mechanics. You can also spec into Improved Roll, which will grant an additional charge. You can also spec into Celerity, which will give it another charge and also reduce the cooldown of Roll by 5 seconds. All right, then we have probably one of the most fun abilities in the game here, Spinning Crane Kick. This is going to be one of our main sources of AoE damage. One thing I really like about it is it has a channel time, which is very similar to Fist of Fury, and that's going to take sort of the button mashing out of our rotation. So just to kind of show you what it looks like here, it's a chi spender. So as I build up chi, I can use it, and I have this small channel time. So that's all time that I'm not having to press buttons on my keyboard. That really adds to the flow of the spec, in my opinion. All right, so first talent here, we have Widening Whirl, which will increase the spinning crane kick radius by 15%. So that's going to be really good just to hit more mobs, more targets. We have Mark of the Crane, which we kind of talked about earlier. Each unique target that you hit with Tiger Palm, Rising Sun, or Blackout is going to give you 18% increased damage on spinning crane kick. So really important to get that spread out. We also have Dance of Chi-Ji. Spinning Chi has a chance to make your next spinning crane kick free and deal an additional 300% damage. So just to show you what that looks like, I'll start spinning some Chi here. Okay, you heard that noise. That means we had a proc there. So you can see how it's lit up here. So when I press that, it's going to be free and it's going to do 300% additional damage. Plus, it's also buffed by Mark of the Crane here. So it's a very hard-hitting ability. This will probably be your main source of AoE damage in dungeons. I have a couple other talents here. We'll quickly talk about Jade Ignition. Basically, Fist of Fury is going to mark the target with this Jade Ignition, and then whenever you spinning crane kick on top of that Jade Ignition, it's going to explode for more AoE damage. We have Crane Vortex, spinning crane kick damage increased by 10%. And then finally, we have Bone Dust Brew, and if you spinning crane kick within a Bone Dust Brew, you will get 1 chi back. All right, let's quickly talk about Tiger Palm here. Strike with the palm of your hand, dealing 13,000 physical damage. Tiger Palm has an 8% chance to make your next blackout kick cost no chi. So Tiger Palm kick is going to be what's going to generate all of our chi for us. So you can see it's lit up here. When it's lit up like this, this means Power Strikes has procced, and your next Tiger Palm will generate 1 additional chi and deal 100% additional damage. Just to show you the tooltip here, here it is, Power Strikes in the talent tree. We've talked about Mark of the Crane. Tiger Palm is involved in Mark of the Crane. We also have Inner Peace, increases maximum energy by 30, and then Tiger Palm damage is increased by 10%. We've also talked about Teaching of the Monastery. Tiger Palm causes your next blackout kick to strike an additional time, stacking up to 3 times. And then finally, we have Sky Touch. Tiger Palm now has a 10-yard range that also applies an effect which increases your crit strike chance by 50% on the target. Just note that this only lasts for 6 seconds and can only be applied once every 1 minute to one specific target. And then just to show you what this looks like, right? Tiger Palm, it generates our chi, and then we use our chi spenders. So we also have Touch of Death here, which is going to basically work as our execute, and it's going to kill enemy targets that have less health than us. Now, you can go into a talent that makes it to where if a mob is less than 15% of their current health, then Touch of Death does come available. This is really good for higher level content. As mob health increases, you will get a bigger window to use Touch of Death. So this can be a little bit hard to use, especially like in lower mythic keys, because trash is dying so fast. You're typically looking at like a 1 to maybe 2 second window, versus in higher keys, once trash lives a little bit longer, you're getting, I'm not sure exactly, probably like a 5 second window, right? It's easier to get the ability off. And then this also spawns 3 chi spears, which will grant 1 chi when you walk through them. So let's take a quick look at some of the talents associated here. We have Improved Touch of Death, which is what changes it to that 15% threshold. Instead of the enemy mob having less health than you, it's now based off a 15% health threshold. So really good talent. We have Fatal Touch, which will reduce the CD by 90 seconds. We have Meridian Strikes. When you combo strike, the cooldown of Touch of Death is reduced by 0.35 seconds, and then an additional buff to Touch of Death's damage. So again, going back to combo striker masteries, This is why you never want to be pressing the same abilities twice in a row. It also affects your Touch of Death. We also have Forbidden Technique. Touch of Death deals 20% increased damage and can be used a second time within 5 seconds before its cooldown is triggered. So basically you get 2 charges of this now. And then Fatal Flying Guillotine. Touch of Death strikes up to 4 additional nearby targets. So this is what's going to turn Touch of Death into that really big damage ability in Mythic Plus content. So just to show you what that looks like, normally it's a single target ability, but when we hit this mob here, you'll see it'll hit all these dummies because it's now an AoE effect. Because it's just hit these 2 here. And then here's your Chi Spears on the ground that you can run through. And now we have 3 Chi. Then we also have Expel Harm here. This is basically going to be mostly just used during pre-pull, as it does use a global. So you don't want to be mixing this into your rotation, but it does generate 1 Chi. So again, use it pre-pull, generate that additional Chi, and then pretty much forget about it until the next pull. But the way it works is you press it, it does a small heal, and then 10% of that healing is then reflected back as damage to your enemies. All right, next we do have Chi Burst. Hurls a torrent of Chi energy up to 40 yards forward, dealing nature damage and healing all allies. Healing is reduced beyond 6 targets. It will generate 1 Chi per enemy target damage up to a maximum of 2. So the damage and the healing is not that great, but it is good for the Chi, right? So just to show you what it looks like, shoots a spear. We hit 3 targets, but only a maximum of 2 Chi is granted. And then we also have Chi Waves. So a wave of Chi energy flows through you in front of foes, dealing 1,900 nature damage or 4,800 healing, and it bounces between the targets. So I'm not going to spec into it, but the way it works is you throw the sphere out and it's just going to bounce between your enemies and targets, doing damage and doing healing. Very similar to kind of how Prayer Mending works for Priest, right? It just kind of bounces around. You throw it out there, you set it, you forget it. Next, we have Summon White Tiger Statue. This is just going to put a small statue on the ground, and it's going to pulse for AoE damage. So to show you what that looks like, put it on the ground here, and it's just going to pulse for AoE damage. And it might have to be in combat for it to work. Yeah, so now you can see that it is starting to pulse. All right, then up next, we have Schwinn the White Tiger. So this is going to basically be one of your Celestials. This is the Windwalker Celestial. And this is going to put out a tiger that will do some cleave damage and some high single target damage. And this is going to be one of your major cooldowns. You're going to want to try to have it up on every single boss fight. But one of the things that makes it so strong isn't necessarily the ability by itself. It's this Invoker's Delight. So whenever you summon a Celestial, you basically get a mini Bloodlust for 20 seconds, increasing your haste by 33%. Then once again, we have Schwinn's Bond. Just going back to combo strikes again. Each time you do a combo strike, you get further and further CDR on this ability. All right, then for an ability that should have probably been further up on the list, I'm not sure why I've waited so long to talk about this one, but Kick Upwards, dealing 56,000 physical damage and reducing the effectiveness of healing on the target for 10 seconds. So this is going to be probably your main Chi spender, but for a single target. So we have Fist of Fury, we have Spinning Crane Kick, and then we have Rising Sun Kick. Those are going to be your 3 main Chi spenders. And as you can see, once again, we have a ton of abilities that kind of synergize with Rising Sun Kick. So we're not going to go into all of them. We've covered a lot of them already. Just to, I guess, discuss some of the noticeable ones here. First one we're going to talk about is Fast Feet. Rising Sun's Kick's damage is increased by 70%. So that's a massive buff. It does take 2 talent points, though. We have Glory of the Dawn on the right-hand side of our spec tree. Gives Rising Sun Kick a 25% chance to trigger a second time, dealing physical damage and restoring 1 Chi. If you are going more of the single target build, you will be going into Rising Star as well. Rising Sun Kick damage increased by 3% and crit strike damage increased by 8%. And kind of as we've already discussed, we have Teaching of the Monastery, we have Transfer of the Power, then we have Schwinn's Battle Gear, which all synergize with Rising Sun Kick. Then I just changed to some random talents here. This is in no way a build that I'd recommend running. I just took some random points out. But we also have Feline Stomp, so I want to show you guys how this ability works. This is an AoE ability that you put on the ground, and it puts this sort of tree-looking marker on the ground. And what's going to do is it's going to damage enemies standing in it, and it's going to heal allies standing in it. All right, the one thing I forgot to talk about here was Feline Harmony. So your abilities reset Feline Stomp 100% more often. That's really good if your tank is moving mobs out of your Feline Stomp, especially in something like Sanguine Week, right? The more uptime you can get, the more procs you can get on Feline Stomp, the more you can spread it out. So there's that, but the real good part about this to me for single target damage is Fey Exposure. This is going to increase your damage and healing up against that target by 12% in seconds. So just to show you what it looks like, let's go here to this far target dummy. We'll drop it, and you can see all these mobs here got Fey Exposure on them. So they're all going to take 12% more damage. And then also, I hope I didn't mess up, if I can get a proc. Okay, so you see I got a proc here, a Feline Stomp. So I can use it again, and I get to skip the rest of the remaining cooldown on it. So that's going to happen twice as often. So the way it works is you use the ability, and you're going to spawn 2 additional spirits next to you, and they're going to basically just mimic your abilities. So just to kind of put this simply, let's go ahead and spawn our spirits. I'll do Rising Sun Kick. They do Rising Sun Kick. I do Spinning Crane Kick. They'll do Spinning Crane Kick as well. So really powerful ability. You get 2 charges of it through talents. I highly recommend picking it up for like Mythic Plus content. We have 2 talents here that synergize with it well. We have Drinking Horn Cover, which will extend the duration of Storm, Earth, and Fire by 0.4 seconds for every chi that you spend. Then on the flip side of that, we have Spiritual Focus. For every 2 chi that you spend, they'll take 1 second off the cooldown. Then we also have Strike of the Windlord here. It costs 2 chi and is on a 40-second cooldown. This is probably going to be the hardest hitting ability on our talent tree. You're going to be striking with both fists, doing 90,000 damage to all enemies in front of you, and it's also going to reduce their movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. You also have Thunder Fist here. Strike of the Windlord grants you a stack of Thunder Fist for each enemy struck. Thunder Fist discharges upon melee strikes, dealing 37,000 damage. So as you Thunder Fist, right, you're hitting all the enemies in front of you. You're putting this charge on them, which will then detonate for further damage. So just to show you what that looks like, again, this costs 2 chi, so I have to build up some chi. Then I use it here, and it struck all targets in front of me, being these 2 dummies here. And there's the, it had the charge on it there too. Up next we have Bone Dust Brew, and it's basically this AoE ground effect that you throw down, and it's going to give your abilities a 50% chance to proc at 40% effectiveness as shadow damage or healing. So just to kind of show you what that looks like, throw it on the ground, puts a dot on them, and as I use my abilities, they have a 40% chance, they have a 50% chance to proc at 40% effectiveness. And if you do Spinning Crane Kick inside of a Bone Dust Brew, you will be refunded with 1 chi. Now, on the flip side of Storm, Earth, and Fire, you also can spec into something called Serenity. It's on a 1.5 minute cooldown. And when you use this ability, you're going to deal 15% increased damage and healing, and all chi consumers are free and cooldown twice as quickly. So, to show you what this looks like. All right, so we pop Serenity. And you can see my Rising Sun Kick. The cooldown was half. Fist of Fury, the cooldown was half. And then, of course, you know, like I said earlier, you get that 15% damage proc on it. So, very useful ability to take if you don't like running Storm, Earth, and Fire. And then 2 other abilities here that we haven't talked about yet. A lot of builds aren't running either of these, but just to go over them, we have Rushing Jade Wind. Plus 1 chi on a 5-second cooldown. It's going to do an AoE damage effect Nothing amazing. It doesn't do crazy damage. It's kind of like a filler spell that you would add to your rotation, but we're not running at the moment. It doesn't do enough damage. And then we also have Whirling Dragon Punch. Very similar. Perform a devastating whirl, dealing 27,000 damage to all nearby enemies. This is on a 20-second cooldown and does not cost any chi. However, it's only usable when Fist of Fury and Rising Sun Kick are on cooldown. So it can be a little bit tricky to use, trying to get both of those on cooldown, because they do have fairly short cooldowns, at least Rising Sun Kick does. So you have kind of a small window to use this ability. But as far as I'm concerned, at the moment, we are not taking either of these. One other thing, I forgot to discuss this earlier. We have Afterlife, so whenever you kill an enemy, there's going to be these healing spheres that are on the ground, and you can actually walk through them to heal you. And then in addition to that, when you kill an enemy with Blackout Kick, you have a 50% chance to summon a chi sphere, granting 1 chi when you walk through it. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into some defensive abilities here. Let's first talk about Dampen Harm. So Dampen Harm reduces all damage you take by 20% to 50% for 10 seconds, with larger attacks being reduced by more. So this will scale based on how much damage you are taking. The bigger the attack, the more that damage will be reduced by. Up next we have Diffuse Magic. So this is going to reduce the magic damage you take by 60% for 6 seconds. And what it's going to do is it's going to transfer all that damage that you absorb, and it's going to reflect it back onto the attacker. So kind of unique in that regard. On the flip side of that, we also have Touch of Karma, which works in a very similar way. So absorbs all damage taken for 10 seconds up to 50% of your maximum health. But this will only redirect 70% of the amount absorbed instead of 100%. Then we also have Fortifying Brew here. Turn your skin to stone for 15 seconds, increasing your current and max health by 20% and reducing all damage taken by 20%. So you can actually pair this up with either Iron Shell Brew, which will increase your armor by 25% and dodge by 25%, or you can pair it up with Expeditious Fortification, which will further reduce the cooldown by 2 minutes. All right, getting a bit into utility. First thing we're going to talk about here is Ring of Peace. So this is basically just going to put this ring on the ground, and enemies in it are going to be ejected from the ring. Now, one thing you can do, and it will silence them as well. Well, it won't silence them, but it will interrupt spell casting. So just to kind of show you what that looks like, put this ring on the ground. It's going to knock people out. Now, if you can get people on a wall, it will actually pin them to that wall for the duration of the ring, effectively stunning them. Our main interrupt here is going to be Spearhand Strike. It's on a 15-second cooldown, which is pretty low. And it's going to interrupt spell casting and prevent any spell in that school from being cast for 3 seconds. Next, we have Paralysis, which is going to incapacitate a target for 1 minute. You can go into Improved Paralysis to further reduce that cooldown by 15 seconds. This is really good if you're trying to skip mobs in a Mythic Plus dungeon. You can paralysis one of them, and it will not put you into combat. Next, we have Tiger's Lust. This is going to increase friendly target or your movement speed by 70, and it will remove all roots and snares. This is going to be really good for like Entangling Week. You can pop this and just immediately remove the entangling. We also have a way to remove poison and disease effects from the target. This is going to be really good on like Afflicted Weeks. You can take this talent, you can cleanse the afflicted mob that spawns and reduce a little bit of pressure off your healer. All right, I think that's pretty much everything in terms of utility. I'm sure I've missed a few things. We also have, I will say this, we do have Flying Serpent Kick here, which I believe is a talent. Yes, which is a talent here. So the way this works, it's on a 20-second cooldown. This is going to add to some of your mobility. So you just press it and you go flying in the air like that, just sort of kicking through the air like a glide. You can cancel it early if needed, if you don't want to go the full range or the full duration. All right, so for talents, I'll go ahead and throw them up on the screen right here. We do have Raid Tree versus a Mythic Plus tree. These talents are not for me. These are off Method J Funk's post that he's made on Method's website. So he knows a lot more about playing Monk than I do. So, anytime I pull any sort of talent build, I try to back that up with a source of a top end player, right? So this is going to be the raid talents. And then right here, we have the Mythic Plus talents. So the Mythic Plus tree is going to focus more around Touch of Death, whereas the raid spec tree is going to focus more on Feline Stomp. There also are a few other talents that are changed in regards to Spinning Crane Kick. I believe Mark of the Crane is taken on Mythic Plus builds and is not taken on the raid build. And then on the raid build, you are also not taking Shadow Boxing Treads. All right, then we have our raid single target and AoE openers here. If you're not running some of these talents, for example, let's say you're not running Feline Stomp, feel free to remove it from the list and just adjust priority as you see fit. But this does include all talents from the tree above. All right, and this is going to be the Mythic Plus single target opener. You're probably not going to be running Feline Stomp. One thing to note here is how we are pairing Strike of the Windlord with Storm, Earth, and Fire. This is very important, as Strike of the Windlord is your hardest hitting ability in your tree. So when you use Storm, Earth, and Fire, you want to be using Strike of the Windlord right behind it. Also, one thing to notice is we are using Expel Harm, but that is going to be pre-pool. So you never want to be using Expel Harm in your rotation ever, but that additional chi does give you a little boost before the pull happens. All right, then after your opener is finished, here's our rotation priority for 1 to 3 targets, and then our rotation priority for 4+ targets. One thing to notice is on 4+ targets, Fist of Fury does get a little bit more valuable, so it does move up to the 7th position, with Blackout Kick dropping a few places from 8 down to position number 9. One thing to also note here is we've not discussed Blackout Reinforcement yet with our tier set, so we will be getting to that shortly. And another thing to note here is this is just a priority list. So for example, after your opener, you're probably not going to have some of these abilities available. Like, for example, Invoke Win the White Tiger, that might not be available, but as you're going through your rotation, when it does become available again, that moves to your number 1 priority. So going into our 2 and 4 set here, the 2 set, just reading it off here, Spinning Crane Kicks grant Blackout Reinforcement, increasing the damage of your next Blackout Kick by 150%. Melee abilities have a chance to grant Blackout Kick Reinforcement. So you have 2 ways to get Blackout Reinforcement, basically just through your normal melee abilities. But if you do get a free Spinning Crane Kick, then it will always activate Blackout Reinforcement. So what do we mean by a free Spinning Crane Kick? So a free Spinning Crane Kick is going to come from Dance of Chi-Ji. So this means that Dance of Chi-Ji is now a required talent for both single target and AoE. So you will always be taking Dance of Chi-Ji no matter what build you are running for those free kicks. And then the 4th set is very simple. Blackout Kick Reinforcement reduces the cooldown of Fist of Fury, Rising Sun Kick, Strike of the Windlord, and Whirling Dragon Punch by 3 seconds. So each time you get that proc, you're getting 3 seconds of CDR. And then the damage of those same abilities is increased by 4%. All right, guys, then as usual, I'm just going to put a screenshot here of our enchants and consumables. So feel free to pause the video here, or you could just go to Wowhead and look those up as well. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and we will see you all in the next one.